this morning from the city of Roswell here. Our development director, Kevin Maevers, back with us. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Well, loving the cooler, calmer weather that we're having today.
Enjoy today. Suck it up, drink it in, enjoy it, because 2 days from now it's going to be a whole different world. So.
I remind people that even though I'm new to Roswell, I grew up in the high desert.
Okay. So you're used to influx
the climate
of temps.
was virtually identical. The seasons were virtually identical. I mean, even the trees and the environment, the natural beauty, virtually identical. Where I grew up, we had cows and we had hay and alfalfa. We had all the agriculture. We even had artesian wells.
Wow.
Where I grew up.
So it's kind of
coming to Roswell is a lot like coming home. So dealing with the spring, let's just say, adversity in the weather, the 50-degree swings between day and night. That's just coming home.
Yeah. Well, I guess, it's fun. To be honest, I don't want like the 100 and all that, but it does make you appreciate the weather a little more. Like when it does rain, you're kind of like, ooh, you know what I mean? It kind of gives you a great appreciation for some of the things you don't get as often.
Oh, so. Yes. Yeah. Yesterday's cloudburst, especially on the north end of town, was extremely welcome.
Yes. We could have done without the hail that I know. Actually, we had a couple people driving from Artesia to Roswell yesterday around 1:30, and there was a storm, and it kind of went through between that had some golf ball size hail, and we had a couple people get their vehicles pretty messed up.
Yeah, so. that is the one thing I do have to admit I've never had to deal with is the golf ball size hail.
Yeah,
so that's an interesting bit of Pecos Valley flavor. That
I mean, we can do without that, but bring the water that comes with it.
Right,
so it's not all in one day, please. But anyway, for folks who aren't familiar, Kevin joins us each month here and kind of keeps us up to date on development items, things that are going on through the city. I know last couple months here we've devoted a lot of time to the cannabis ordinance and how that's been tweaked and adjusted here. But it sounds like that's all pretty much done. It's just people going through the process and just doing our thing now, right?
It is. The nice thing about last night in particular is last night was our largest agenda in terms of total number of items. Okay. Now, granted, there were 4 cannabis items last night, but it was the variety of the cannabis items that went through that was really, really interesting. We had one cannabis establishment that required only the zone change and a conditional use permit. Their existing facility up on the north end of town was already in a C2 zone, which is what we're looking for. They were already in a shopping center. There was good separation distance to residential. They fit the ordinance perfectly, which again, one of the big concerns that we've had expressed by the cannabis community is that our ordinance was too tight, or that our ordinance didn't give our folks the flexibility to open shops. Obviously completely untrue. And that's one of the things we have noticed. We've gotten a lot of kudos actually on our cannabis ordinance as being one of the best designed cannabis ordinances. And not just from the people here in Roswell, but from people in the cannabis community and people from other jurisdictions. So I've entertained a number of phone calls over the past month from a number of other cities and counties here in the, especially here in southeast New Mexico.
Gotcha.
And they said, "Hey, would you mind if we took a good hard look at your ordinance? We may want to amend ours. So we understand you guys
plagiarize some of yours."
So it's nice to be recognized for those efforts. But like I said, we had 4 different cannabis facilities go through last night. One that fit the ordinance perfectly. 2 others that were close but required a minor variance, but they were existing facilities in operation. We could lean on the fact that they'd been operating.
They're established, kind of grandfather.
Yeah, they were. I'm trying to get people to get away from that term grandfather. Because it's under our ordinance, they become existing non-conforming uses.
Gotcha.
Okay. When you're a non-conforming use, that means that you are allowed to continue to operate as you've always done. Okay, which would have limited them to medical only.
Gotcha.
Okay. However, they wanted to all go through the process. They wanted to go get their zone change, get their conditional use permit, do things so that they could expand their facilities and sell not only the medical but the adult use,
the
recreational adult use cannabis. The last one was an interesting one. It was our first brand new facility. Okay. Now, it was an existing building. They had been a CBD dealership store selling the cannabidiol products, which are available over the counter.
Gotcha.
But they are also a derivative of the cannabis plant. They come from non-THC bearing hemp plants.
Gotcha. So basically what they sold, the non-high making forms of cannabis products.
And it's been there's enough scientific studies out there, of course, because it's derived from industrial hemp as opposed from the THC bearing cannabis. It was something that's available nationwide. There isn't any special permits. You can go to just about any grocery store or other store these days, and of course you can buy it on the internet.
Sure,
it's not. But they were selling that, and they want to do transition to offer the medical cannabis and the recreational as well.
Stuff with the THC.
So they went to the state, they got their appropriate permit, and they were just going through the process. And so last night we heard from them. They were approved as well. So it's like I say, every company that has come through and gone through the process, turned in all the paperwork that they needed to, taken the time to go through the applications and everything, has eventually been approved. So I believe we have one more cannabis facility lined up for next month. And then after that, I'm assuming we're just going to kind of go into a holding pattern with the industry to see how things shake out.
Sure.
But of course, that's up to them. It truly is a growth industry. So, we're expecting additional applications and things to loosen up, but the initial rush to get in seems to be calming down just a little bit.
So for the groups, the four you saw last night, once they get past this portion and get approved and greenlit for there, then do they go to before the city council at that point?
They will go before. All four of them will be at the city council meeting in June.
In June,
which I believe is June 12th.
Okay,
I think that sounds
whatever
the second Thursday in June is. They'll all go before the city council. That will be the final review and approval process. There was a couple of the cannabis companies that wanted some minor changes to their conditions of approval. They'll bring forward those requests for those minor adjustments. It's typically in hours of operation and things like that. They would like to match their existing hours of operation. What we're trying to do at the city, though, is create a level playing field for this new industry. And that's something that I think I explained last month. The reason we decided to use the floating zone rather than designate specific areas of the city, the reason that we decided to establish hours of operation, including, at least at this point, no Sunday hours as well. The reason there's certain places in the city that are off limits because of, it's traditionally the downtown areas, your historic areas, your sports fields and things like that. There is just a conflict, let's just put it that way, between family-oriented type of events and certain other businesses and things and the cannabis industry. Again, that doesn't stop people from growing their own in their home and enjoying to their heart's content. But there have been some very difficult conflicts, especially when you're dealing with sports and children. People want to light up out in the park and enjoy a smoke. That doesn't necessarily mix well with children who are out there playing soccer and baseball and football and things like that.
Well, and this is the thing we all must remember is we are one community. We all live here. We all enjoy freedoms. The freedoms you enjoy, other people get to enjoy them. But how do we do it so we all get to enjoy that? It's a little bit of compromise, a little bit of here. Grant, we went from something that was completely illegal a year ago is now legal. But we understand there's dangers, there's pitfalls to cannabis, just like there is alcohol and anything else. And some families don't. So what I mean is this is a compromise. Okay, you can't smoke your joint in the park. Sorry. Go home and do it. But you know what? Now you can do it. You have the right to do it. But you know what? Those same people have the right to be able to play in the park with their kids and not worry about potheads smoking joints in the corner while they're trying to do youth volleyball or soccer or whatever it is out there. You know what I mean? And this is called the compromise. And we need to be adults about this and say, you know what? It's a time and place for this and a time and place for this. You wouldn't go into your kid's classroom drinking a beer, would you? no one. I think most people would probably frown upon that.
Most people would.
This is kind of in that same ballpark. It's like read the room, man. You know what I mean? And if we can all read the room a little bit, I think we could understand this.
Well, and that is one of the things that we worked very hard between June of last year and January of this year, putting together this very comprehensive ordinance. And I've had a couple of people ask me if there's such concerns over public health, over public safety, over a lot of other things, where are those representatives? Why aren't they here?
Sure.
Well, because we've already met with them and we built those protections into the ordinance.
There's reasons why these are part of the ordinance.
And as long as we follow the ordinance, there's no reason for them to be here representing their concerns.
Their concerns
We've
are
already
heard.
gone over that. They've already submitted all their information. Because that's we have spent a lot of time defending the time, place, and manner rules. Okay. What we haven't spent nearly as much time talking about to a lot of people is health, safety, and welfare requirements as well, which is truly the mission of any municipal organization, is to protect public health, safety, and welfare.
Sure.
That's the reason we exist, is to provide that organization. So, when we get people with a more libertarian philosophy of life, they sometimes need to be reminded that my individual liberty ends where yours begins.
Yeah.
Okay. And the right to breathe clean, fresh, non-THC bearing air is something. And of course, growing up during the 1970s and in California, I am very, very well aware of the fact that when I went to certain parties, I didn't need to bring any of my own. All I had to do was walk through the room and breathe deeply.
Yeah. Well, and let's face it, THC and alcohol, these are mind-altering substances.
Yes.
They are going to affect things like decision-making. So when you're out in public consuming said things, and then you start, getting your intuitions and the things that normally make you act like a mature individual in a room, sometimes those things go down a little bit when you're out there, and then you start doing and saying things that are inappropriate. So
your inhibitions get lowered.
So yes, we don't want you acting like a fool in the park while kids are trying to have a good time. That's what we're. That's the point we're making. And you know what? God bless you. You want to have. You're American. You want to go home, have a beer, go home and smoke a joint. God bless you. It's your life. You do do you, but. You got to remember, we all live on the same planet, and we all need to work with each other. And somebody's family may find that very offensive, what you're doing. So don't do it in a place where a bunch of kids hang out. Just be smart about it, and that way you don't have to worry about fighting every battle. You know what I mean?
And those are battles you really don't want to fight because you tend to lose anyway.
Yeah.
So it's better if we all just respect each other's. Health and safety, the right to breathe clean air, or the right to get high.
Yeah, exactly.
Either way, and that's built into our ordinance. Our ordinance, with respect to personal consumption, makes basically one statement, and that is for adults 21 and over in your home. Okay, it is the I don't like to use the term legal because the product is not necessarily legal. It's been decriminalized.
Yeah.
For home consumption, for personal consumption, for personal cultivation, you can have up to 6 plants per person, up to 12 plants maximum per household, and you can transport, you can carry, you can do. But fair warning, and if you talk to have a meeting with Chief Smith of the Roswell Police Department, every single one of our officers right now that patrol our streets are being trained to recognize people that are driving high.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not something you want to be doing.
Okay? No, you will get caught. And to be honest, I imagine technology is going to change where they'll probably have something chemical that they can do. Like with alcohol, they can do a breathalyzer and everything. Marijuana, those things don't work. They don't, because marijuana stays in your system for 30. So you could have smoked it 30 days ago, shows them your system, and you're sober as a judge. So you're not driving under the influence there. So that isn't a value test to them. They've got to do other things to determine whether you're impaired or not. But I imagine at some point they'll come up with some kind of scientific thing that they can tell whether you're high it now or just you smoked weed a month ago.
Well, the other thing that we have to be careful of, and we haven't talked about this a lot, of course, is the federal government.
It's still illegal.
They still take a very dim view of the cannabis use, and we have a wonderful facility to the south,
yes,
governed by the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation Safety Administration, and a bunch of other folks that still again take a very dim view of cannabis use. So it's a again just people need to be careful about.
Be warned.
Not just about whether they use it themselves, but whether they're around other people who are using simultaneously.
Even possession.
Yeah.
Like I've heard stories of keep going farther south to another federal facility that in our FLETC, where the law enforcement training center. I've heard stories where people, where marijuana is legal, they have a dime bag or whatever, a couple of edibles, whatever they got in their car, and they go through the gate, and it's there. Guess what? You're now committing a federal crime because you just have possession of marijuana while getting on a federal property. And those people got arrested for that. And you know what? Weed's legal, but like Kevin's saying, it's not legal in all circles here. So if you're down at the airport or you're doing in any federal facility with this stuff, you're going to be prosecuted, and you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah. The other, and we need to remember that we have sister states, where it is not legal. And I've heard some of the people in the cannabis industry say, "Well, we're looking at the windfall of revenue from neighboring states." Well, guess where all of our cannabis sniffing dogs now that were in New Mexico, but we had to either retire them or sell them to other jurisdictions because and I'll probably tell this story incorrectly, but again, another one coming from Chief Smith. He was telling us that any of the dogs that were trained out as drug sniffing dogs, if they also hit on cannabis, those dogs had to be retired because they would be sniffing for other drugs other than cannabis, but they'd hit on cannabis. So it didn't take the bad guys long to know that if they were transporting something that they shouldn't be transporting, you just put some cannabis around it
instead of trying to mask it.
The dogs hit on the cannabis. That's the end of your search. So all of these dogs right now, if they were not retired, they were given to the state of Texas.
Gotcha.
Guess where you find those dogs now?
Sitting on the border communities
along the border between New Mexico and Oklahoma and Texas. And so I would caution anyone who is thinking of coming over here from Texas, purchasing here, and then transporting back across state lines.
You might. Yeah.
That is still a crime.
Yes. And if you get caught, and be forewarned, when you go on your vacations this summer and you drive over to Texas and Arizona, leave your cannabis here in New Mexico, you bring it with you, you're going to get arrested if you get caught. Right. It's just part of the deal.
I had a funny. Do we have time for a funny story? Again, early in my career with cannabis, I was working still as a private consultant. So I was representing a number of cannabis companies who were building new facilities on the east side of California, right up near the Colorado River and the Arizona border. Well, one of the companies that I was working with at the time, they had, and this was right before the legislation that California had passed was going into effect to allow for recreational cannabis. So everybody was gearing up with all their buildings and their designs and everything else. But the gentleman I was working for wanted me to come over to Arizona and tour one of their facilities to see how nice it was. And so I went right over the river, over to Arizona, and toured this facility, and it was gorgeous, very high tech, very well done, and took me into the flowering room. Now, if you've never been in a flowering room of a cannabis facility,
can't say that I have.
Oh yeah, well, cannabis flower and the pollen and the stuff that it puts off in a flowering room, and you're in a very enclosed environment, very secure environment, but the stuff is just sticky like glue. So you walk through this and it sticks to you everywhere. Every open, exposed piece of skin, all your clothing and everything else. You go out of the room and you smell like cannabis.
Gotcha.
Okay. As I'm walking out of the room and I'm getting in and I realize I've got this stuff all over my face and my hands and everything else. So I wash my face, I wash my hands, and then I realize it's in my hair, it's all over my clothes. And and I'm in Arizona, and they haven't approved cannabis, and I've got to go back through a Border Patrol checkpoint.
And you smell like a dispensary.
And I smell like a flower. I smell like a cultivation facility. Okay. So thankfully, my knowledge of back roads kicked in, and I was able to avoid any conflict, to get back to my hotel room in California, to take off all my clothes and take a shower and go back to work with clean clothes and a cleaned out. But again, those are the kind of things that you have to think about when you're dealing with the cannabis industry. I was reading some other material. It's not. I think we are just right now approaching like half of the states in the United States have some form of cannabis legislation which legalizes either medical or adult use or both. So you do have to be a bit careful if you're going to be in that industry. And every state has different laws. Every community applies those laws in a different way, and so it's a tough industry to be in, but it's just as tough to be a consumer.
Sure. Well, we were talking about this, I think, last month or month before, where you kind of where it really is going to get interesting when and if the feds do legalize it, because right now you have a bunch of companies nationally, but they're all kind of limited to their states on as far as distribution and things, because once you bring it across the state line, then you start, getting into federal law territory.
Right. Well, and that's the only way that at this point the industry has maintained its legal status, is they are avoiding interstate commerce laws. So the law, it must be grown here, it must be cultivated here, it must be processed, it must be manufactured. If you're turning it into some kind of it's got to be tested for efficacy, and it's got to be sold and consumed here. Okay, the minute you cross state line, you're talking about violations of federal law. So it's that's why the industry is struggling. So if the federal government does decriminalize cannabis consumption, it is going to open up a lot of opportunities, but it's also going to create more problems, especially for some of the states that are in their early stages of development. Once you cross state lines, once they're allowed to cross state lines, there will be a flood of cannabis coming from the more mature coastal states.
I think at some point we're going to start seeing like your Coca-Colas and McDonald's of marijuana once that happens. Kind of. Because once they can do that, then there's going to be national, and then kind of like with whiskey and everything else, your Jack Daniels, these are all distributed because they're known across the world. I think once feds do that, next thing you know, we're going to start seeing like national brand products that are synonymous with cannabis.
It's already happening.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but I think
in fact the largest investors right now into the cannabis industry is the tobacco industry.
Gotcha.
The tobacco industry.
Well, they see the writing on the wall. They're probably losing business on one end, and they're saying, "Here's our new revenue stream."
So that's going to, and then of course, depending on the type of cannabis and the type of product, you've got your large pharmaceutical companies that are right now investing into the research and development for new drugs and other things that will come from the higher end, more efficacious versions of the cannabis. So we're already seeing the large corporations move in tentatively, at least in the investment end and the R&D end, if it's legalized nationwide. And the research and development has already begun showing results, especially with certain THC compounds. I believe we have a couple of new drugs now to treat childhood epilepsy. The anecdotal evidence, of course, of the ability to deal with cataracts and glaucoma. The cancer treatments has been not treating the cancer itself, but reducing the effects of the cancer treatment, the nausea and lack of appetite and things that go along with that. Those are all well documented. And there's no doubt they will continue to look at those things, probably go through the FDA process, and we will see full-on pharmaceutical-grade cannabis-derived products at some point in the very near future.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of marijuana is literally like the .com boom of the 90s here, and because now everyone's getting in, but it's going to be one of those things where at some point the bottom's going to fall out or something's going to, and then the ones that did it smart are going to survive and be Fortune 500s. The others are going to go by the wayside,
and just like every other industry in the world. In fact, the gentleman that I was talking to out in the lobby that runs the local
Oasis Computers,
Oasis Computer Shop, and was telling me that at one point there were a couple of dozen computer stores here in town that sold and serviced and everything else. But there's obviously been massive consolidation in that particular industry, and the days of the little mom and pop shop are pretty much over.
Yeah, it's tough out there. So we got a couple more minutes. Is there anything from the meeting last night that wasn't cannabis related? We want to get the word out about it.
A couple of different things. Couple of different things related to again housing. We had 2 more new subdivisions, units of a subdivision come in. So the final plats on about 110 more homes were approved last night. Good. And then we did have a small, I believe it was a conversion of an older church building that they were looking to do a event center or an event hall. That was also went through. So that was nice. So kind of these little details. The thing that was driving a lot of the discussion and what I want to get out because of the residential concern, the weather over the past few days. I want to let everybody know we've received all the phone calls and then some. The dust, the blowing sand, the debris, and of course, what I would like to remind everyone is to just be a little bit patient and a little bit understanding. We know that it's tough, but we have truly a perfect storm of events that we're trying to deal with right now. We have the extended drought that we've been dealing with. We have the springtime winds and the weather. And then for the first time in 40 or 50 years, we actually have significant construction and growth activity around town. Yeah. So we have those 3 things. And I know that everybody wants to know, well, why aren't they getting out there? Why aren't they watering? Why aren't they doing everything? We also have concerns over our water table. Sure. We cannot just arbitrarily be getting out there and throwing. So I am meeting with our largest contractors. We are looking into what can be done. It may be a situation where we tighten up the scheduling. The most of the dust and things coming off of construction sites. We have to remind everyone that number one, it's temporary because once the site gets built, there's no more dust. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing is that the problems with wind and the storms is intermittent as well. So we don't want to create a very expensive permanent solution to a temporary and intermittent problem.
Makes sense.
Because right now with the interest rates going up and the cost of doing business going up, because adding another layer of significantly expensive but temporary type of cost is just going to continue to drive those houses up. I was meeting with one of our builders the other day, and they said just the interest rate hikes that we've seen since the first of the year means you can qualify now for 70% of the house you could have at the beginning of the year.
Wow.
Last time I looked, interest was over 6%. Okay. A year ago, January, when I arrived here, I bought my new house at 2.9.
Yeah. I refinanced mine about a year ago, and I'm around that 3% area too. And I'm very thankful at the moment.
Right. I am very thankful. My wife is brilliant.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
She goes, honey, go to the credit union, get a 20-year fixed rate loan, and we'll make it work. We'll make it work. Yeah. And I did. And right now I go home every day and thank her for her wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty, but good news is, what you got is now worth a whole lot more than what you paid for it a year or two ago.
As long as the market stays strong.
Exactly.
That is one of the unfortunate lessons that I have learned over the course of my career is that much like any other investment, there's no guarantee with housing that it's going to go up in value.
Good news is you're a little bit more stable in real estate than other
a little bit,
investment ventures,
especially if you plan on living there for a while.
Sure, but like anything else, it's do your homework. You can buy it. It's a lot harder to buy a lemon in real estate, but you can still buy them.
But anyway, what I would ask the folks who are listening to do. I don't know when our next storm is coming in. I'm assuming the weather cycle is going to continue through June before we, with the wind and the weather changes and everything else. But call our office.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that the first thing everybody wants to do is complain to their city council person. The city council person will listen to your concerns
and then call you.
They typically call the city manager.
Okay.
And then the city manager or this deputy city manager calls me or calls our building official or calls and we're the ones that actually or calls code enforcement, and we're the ones that actually get it done.
Gotcha.
My phone number, as we tell everybody every month, is on the city's website, the Community Development Department.
Yeah.
If you call me directly, even if it's on the weekend, it'll send me an email, then letting me know that I need to listen to something.
Okay.
And we'll be able to identify it and take action quicker,
Sure,
rather than having to go through the telephone chain.
Sure. I know it feels good to talk to the top official.
It does.
But sometimes the top official's got bigger fish to fry and doesn't want to handle your problem right now.
Well, they number one, they are very busy, and number two, the end result of that, while it does make you feel better, yes, I mean, I have to admit, I enjoy the fact that I can talk to my my mayor and my ward representatives and things as part of my job. But the fact is, because the population is so small, not just here in Roswell, but statewide, you can pretty much get a hold of your elected officials pretty easily. The question is whether or not they're the ones you need to talk to, especially if there's something occurring right now.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, do you call the mayor or do you call 911 when you're having a heart attack?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like a congressman. He's like, you talk to your congressman, the congressman's going to call a hearing.
Right.
You call the guy with the wrenches, they're going to go and fix it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here.
That's true. And so, again, I invite everyone, if you, my direct line to my office is 575-500-0389. Okay? And, of course, community development includes our code enforcement department. It's the building inspections department. We have also business license and real estate as well.
Okay.
But if the phone call comes directly to me, I will make sure somebody is on top of it. If it's during the week, during normal business hours, I do my best to return all phone calls and emails by the end of the day. So
perfect.
Please do not be afraid to reach out to our office.
Absolutely. And like you said, with code enforcement stuff, I know you talk about weeds and all those kind of things.
Right.
And I know we all need to do our part. I know it's drying out there, but actually keeping the weeds down is good for not just beautification, but in these dry times, safety too.
Well, and that's the other thing. If you go to the city's website, and right on the homepage, there's a document called a Fix It form.
Yes.
Okay. So for weeds and other things, you click on that, you fill out that form, you send it in. It is automatically distributed to multiple departments depending on the complaint and the concern. We had one come through a week or so ago, and it was actually ended up being a welfare check on an elderly woman, and there was cats, so and other things going on. So we ended up that particular one ended up going to I think every department in the city had
all hands on deck.
It really was an all hands on deck kind of thing. And when we went in there, we were glad we did, because we've even our building department, we found problems with the plumbing. We found problems with other things that are now being taken care of. Animal control had to deal with some of the situations out there. Code enforcement, there was other things. It really was a situation, and of course, the elderly woman that was living there needed some help too.
Yeah.
So
this is all for health and safety. It's not just to make your neighbors mad. It really isn't.
We do our best to try not to upset people. We understand that people are, if they're filling out a Fix It. Most people aren't when they fill out those forms, they aren't being vindictive.
Yeah.
They are saying, hey, we've got a problem here.
Sure.
It needs to be addressed.
They live in that community, and it bothers them, and that's their right.
And so we have to go in with the idea, this is a problem that needs to be fixed. There's an issue here that it must be investigated, and many times investigated with a great deal of care.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then trying to get it right, rather than fast sometimes. That's the better approach sometimes.
In fact, it's actually the better approach most of the time.
Most of the time it is.
There's always people always, well, when are you going to get out here? When are you going to get out here? I've had people say and I've had to ask them. I said, "Do you want it done the situation corrected right, or do you want it corrected right now?" Because there's two very different approaches,
and one may not make you happy.
Yes,
very good. Well, Kevin, as always, appreciate the visit. Is there anything else we missed? Now that I think about it, real quick. Is there anything we get at all?
Oh, there's 100 things we could talk about. Maybe we just start doing a preview of coming attractions for next month.
There you go. There you go. But appreciate the talk and information as always, and we look forward to next month, and hopefully we're. New businesses. We got more bigger and more exciting things to talk about.
I hope so. That's the whole point of what we do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
All right, Mike. Thank you.